Hi, my name is Rachel Carr, and I am part of the Brooklyn region of the New York City Church of Christ. Well, I'm a teacher. I teach in the New York City school system, and we have summers off, which is lovely, and I love to travel. But over the last few years, I've become more interested in how to combine my love for travel with being able to serve, because honestly, serving is not necessarily the thing I'm really great at. So I wanted to be able to do those two things. I knew that HOPE had programs that went overseas because I do love to travel internationally. So back in December, HOPE opened up the applications to see and put it out there on the online to see who was interested in going to overseas in order to serve. I looked at programs that focused on education because I am a teacher. And so I applied to a program in Kenya. So when I was applying, they have a very serious vetting process, and I was a little intimidated by it, to be perfectly honest. So you send in your application and everything, but if you have any health conditions, they require that you have doctor's clearances in order to make sure that you'll be okay when you go overseas. And I also have some things that are going on with me that required me to have doctor's clearances and all of that. So it was a little hard because I was thinking they're not going to accept me. What's going to happen? But they did accept me. I was really grateful. You had to have letters of recommendation from people in your ministry. So that was something else. You had to write a letter. You had to write an essay about your relationship with God. You had to. It was a lot. But I'm the kind of person that if I know I want to do something, if I keep going with it, and so God just kept putting it on my heart, and so I was able to complete the application, and in February I got accepted, so I was really excited. And then the second part of the work began. I needed to get shots. I needed to speak with my doctors. I needed to get plane tickets. I needed to pay the rest of the registration fee. All those things happened. And I needed to prepare myself just to be able to go. However, what was great about the trip prior to going, I know this is all leading up to going, but I'm sharing all of that because I think it's important to know that it's not just get on a plane and go help out. I think it's important for people to know that there is a lot of care that the staff took in making sure that we were prepared emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And one of the things that was done to prepare us spiritually was in May, they sent us copies of quiet times so that we could begin to actually look at the scriptures and prepare our hearts to put into practice the scripture that speaks of, as I have loved you. So we had 28 days. It was 14 days, but you could have extended to 28 days of quiet time so we could look at. We were also encouraged to be able to connect with people because people were coming from all over the world in order to do this. So I was able to connect with Nana Franciamore. She and her husband and their 3 kids went to Kenya. So that was a lot of money because they had to pay for everyone. But it was really encouraging to connect with them. And so July 28th, I believe, I'm on a plane going overseas to Nairobi. I was scared. I was nervous. I wasn't sure what to expect. But I knew it was something that I really wanted to do, and I'm really glad I was able to do it. So we get to Kenya, and we were met at the airport by some of the staff of HOPE, which was great. They took us to a hostel where we had a room. And we were able to, I had my own room, so that was really exciting. We had a hostel, we stayed in the rooms, and then we got a chance to meet everybody else that was going to be helping with the service. The ages of the people that went were ages 5, and I say 5 because Nana and James brought their little girl, Jenna, from 5 to age 60. I'll be really honest, I was insecure about going because I knew I'd be one of the older members of the group, and I was like, oh, these young folks, they're not gonna care, what am I doing here? But they were so amazing. Everybody was so cool. And I think the biggest thing I found was that everybody had a place. Everybody had something to contribute to the organization, to what we were doing. And so that was really, really cool. So anyway, backtrack. So we get to Nairobi. We started off by doing a welcome orientation. We found out the things that we would be doing. And then we got on, and a couple of days after we got there, we got on a bus going to a place called Embu. Embu is about 3 hours outside of Nairobi, and we stayed at a hostel where that the Boy Scouts normally stay in. We actually were able to stay there. Our team was able to stay there. There were about 30 of us all together, and we were from all over the United States, and there was another gentleman from Australia who also came. Our job was to work at a school. HOPE had already identified the school in the last year, and what they did last year was that they created a playground for this particular school. So our job was to go back to the school and beautify it. So we were divided up into different teams, and in those teams we had 4 different things to do. One of the things that we did was we taught Vacation Bible School to the students that were there. Another thing that was done was we did carpentry, and the carpentry was focused on making sure that the students had tables and benches to eat at in the dining hall. We focused on painting. I did a lot of painting. And then we also focused on going to students' homes. We did home visits where we actually got a chance to see how people lived and got a chance to interact with the moms and with the kids in their home environments. The HOPE had actually hired a professional carpenter and a professional painter to come, and their job was not to paint or to do the carpentry. Their job was to train us to do it. So, and I'm talking cutting wood. So the brothers, they did an amazing, amazing job. They actually cut the wood and they had to make up ways to measure it so that it was all uniform. I don't know how they did it, but I remember seeing like this makeshift tape measure. But they had to actually cut the wood, make it a certain specification, make sure that the height was appropriate and uniform, and they made benches. And this was all so that the children could have some place to sit while they were having lunch in the dining hall. And in terms of the painting, I spent a lot of time painting. I didn't do a lot of carpentry personally because I have asthma and the dust wouldn't have been best. And also I didn't want to nail myself to anything. But I did a lot of painting. And so the painter came in, he showed us what to do. And then one of the brothers, basically he did designs and we just painted it in. It was almost like none of us there were professionals in what we did. And so, but what it was God, kind of like what the sermon was like today. It's like God created a creativity in us so that we could make it beautiful for the students and for the families. So that was something that happened with the carpentry. There was also another component where we had an opportunity to train the residents of the town in terms of using water filters that had been donated to HOPE, because the water that's sent to the homes through the city pipeline is not the best in terms of being able to drink from, being able to cook with. So HOPE had procured some water filters so that the families could use them in order to be able to have clean drinking water. Another thing that we did was we visited the office that is in Embu, and they're very much responsible for making sure that HIV and AIDS is lessened and prevented in that particular area. So they targeted female sex workers, and they also targeted men having sex with men. And so the idea there was to be able to help people that are in those high-risk populations get access to the health care that they needed so that the epidemic didn't continue. So those were the logistics of what we did. Another part of the logistics was that pretty much we had breakfast at 7 in the morning. People were up by about 5 or 6 to have quiet times with each other, and that was really encouraged, that we had quiet times with each other and that we had an opportunity to connect with each other spiritually and emotionally. We had breakfast around 7. We had devotionals at 8 with everyone. Then we were on the bus by 8:30 to go to the school. We came back to the building to have lunch at about 12:30, 12:45. Back on the bus by 1:45, worked till about 4. Came back to the building, had a little bit of free time, dinner at 7, and D groups at 8. So it was a full day, and it was a full day every day. There were definitely some parts that I was ready to shut down because I was missing the comforts of home. I was missing being able to drink water from the faucet. I was missing a lot of things. And I guess I didn't really realize how wealthy I am, how wealthy we are in our country, because the people in Africa do so much with so little, and yet they were so amazingly gracious and grateful. And I almost felt put to shame by the fact that I have so much and I complain, you know. So I was really, really grateful for the opportunity to go. The other thing that was surprising for me as well was the bonds that we made with all the other volunteers. There was a woman there who was so excited that she just started dancing down the aisle and was so excited to get this water filter because, I mean, I take it for granted. I turn on the water, I can drink it, you know, but not so there. And so just to be able to give that to them was amazing. I had some insecurities about being one of the older members of the team. But one of the things that one of the brothers said, and actually the sisters as well, they were like, we're so glad that we have people here that are a little bit older on this trip. And I was like, really? They're like, yeah, because we want to be able to, basically they want to be able to see people that are further along in their spiritual walk so that they can have some examples and have hope that, you know, we can still serve God. We still can do these things no matter what age we are. And I just had never realized that. And it was really, I don't use the word convicting very often, but it was convicting to me because I realized that in my own mind, I've kind of put a barrier between myself and the younger generation in my home congregation. And so I don't necessarily reach out to them the way that I need to. And I was like, wow, I need to change. I need to come home and I need to begin to reach out more to the folks that are a little bit younger than me because I'm missing out, you know, and that's just the way what a family should do. So I started doing that, started reaching out to people, having breakfast and all that other stuff, and it's been really, really good. If I were to say some takeaways I had, I would say one of my takeaways was that I'm capable of giving more than I ever thought that I could. And I think the scripture reference for that, I believe, is Luke 12:47-50, where it says, from whom much has been given, much will be expected, and from whom to the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be required. And I think about how much God has given me, and I realize there's so much more that I can give. And I'm excited that God gave this to me because I feel like, because I've been a disciple for so long, it's easy to sort of get into this comfortable kind of place where you're kind of maintaining and you've got your friends and you do your thing and not realize there's so much more that you can do for God. There's so much more, so many more ways that He can use you. I got a chance to hear people's conversion stories. I got a chance to learn that the people who were there were pretty much kingdom kids. And that was something else too to think about because so many of the kids there, the teens that were there, the young people that were there, if I had had children, they would have been the children of people in my age group. And they had some really challenging stories. And I had this idea of kingdom kids like, oh, well, you're a kingdom kid, so life must have been easy. No, it's not. And just being able to hear their stories, their conversion stories, being able to hear the challenges that they went through was like, wow, okay, I need to pay more attention to the men and women that are in our church that have been raised in Christian families because they have some stuff going on there too. I think one of the other things that we did that I forgot to mention was that we actually had a chance to meet with the teachers at the school, where we had an opportunity to meet with them and talk with them about how different the educational system is in Africa versus America, and got a chance to compare notes. It was an amazing experience. Would I go back? Possibly, maybe. I definitely, though, believe it changed my thought process about serving. It changed my thought process about the poor. It changed my thought process about what it means to be like Jesus in my home congregation. Because one of the things that was said was that the HOPE Volunteer Corp is not meant to be something that you go to and do and come back home and stay the same. It's meant to be something that you go to, your heart gets massaged, gets changed, and then you come back and make changes in your home congregation so that where you are immediately can be impacted by the things that you've experienced, seen and experienced. So I highly recommend it. I think if even a small amount of us did this, our ministry would be different because I think we'd have a better perspective of what God's given us and then be able to share that with people around us. There's many different ways to be poor. There's poor physically, there's poor emotionally, there's poor spiritually. I find, because God has blessed me and I'm in a place in my career, of course I'd like more money, but money's not a major issue for me at this point. You know, don't go to Starbucks one day and then I can save, $10, whatever. What I find my biggest challenge is in giving emotionally and in giving time. And so when I think about giving to the poor now, yes, I have decided and have made some changes, or I'm making some changes about what I give financially. But I realize that's not necessarily sacrificial for me. What's sacrificial for me is to spend time with people. What's sacrificial for me is to spend time with people that might have some emotional needs. And what has shifted in my thought process is that I don't have to protect myself from doing that anymore. I think because I do struggle with anxiety and depression, I kept myself back from giving in that way because I was afraid. I was afraid of cycling downward. I was afraid of struggling with the suicidal thinking that had gotten me to this place many years ago. And so I realized that in growing in my relationship with God, that He wants me to not be afraid of doing that anymore. He wants me to not be afraid to give emotionally and to give of my time. And so those are some of the things that have shifted. I've already started to have coffee with people and all of that because I realize that that's the next step for me, is to be able to give in those ways that are not comfortable for me. Money's one thing, but for me, time and emotional investment is a whole different story. And that's where I find that my focus has shifted the most. The reason why I would say Kenya did that for me was because we had a culture there. A culture was created for us to be able to share with each other, for us to be able to pray together, for us to be vulnerable with each other, we had D groups every night, and the D groups were like 4 or 5 people. So, and the honesty of the younger folks just prompted me to be more honest. And so I think just having those interactions and those relationships there is what really helped me to have a different mindset. So if I were going to give advice to anyone about going, the first thing I would say is don't put any limits on God. You're never too old. You're never too young. The fact that we had a group that started at age 5 and went to age 60, there are no infirmities that will, preclude you per se from going. And I think the thing to know is that don't talk yourself out of it. Sometimes we can talk ourselves out of things because we're afraid instead of letting God make the decision. If God doesn't want you to go, He's going to shut it down. But if He wants you to go, the things that can happen in your life would be incredible. I think for me personally, going is something that God allowed me to be able to do so that I could get the shot in the arm that I needed to continue the race that I'm in to get to heaven. If I had not gone, I don't know. Maybe I would have been, a bench warmer or someone that's, because I know how to look good at church. I know how to come to church. I know how to come to midweek. I know how to do those things. But this is massaging our hearts, which is what God cares the most about, is our hearts. And so this helped me with that. So I would say, if anything, don't put any limits on God, because He will make it happen. The money, everything. He will make it happen. One thing too about the vetting process, I mentioned the part about the doctors, is that you had to fill out an application, right? And in the application, you had to list any medicines that you took. You had to list the frequencies. You had to list the dosages. I'm also, not only do I have a primary care physician, but I have some mental health things going on. So I have a struggle with anxiety and depression. So one of the things I also had to list was those things as well. And I had to get clearances from my primary care physician and my psychiatrist. And now this is the convicting thing, is that I put down all the lists, I put down everything I had, I sent it in, they're like, well, you gotta get these clearances. And the first thing they do is they say, we want you, the doctor, to review what the patient put down as what she's struggling with. The medications, the dosages, is it accurate? So I was like, whoa, I'm so glad I didn't lie, because if you did, they'd know that. So that was a little intense for me. So, but like I said, and the reason why I say don't put the limits on God is because with all of that, with the fact that I struggle with depression and anxiety, with the fact that I was on medication, the fact that I have a psychiatrist, the fact that I have arthritis, the fact that I have high blood pressure, all that stuff, and God still let me go. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. And my health was perfectly, I don't even think I got bit by a mosquito when I was over there. So my health was fine when it was over there. I had a little bit of an asthma issue, but that was easily remedied. So that would be what I would say. Don't put limits on God.